Hey, what's happening, y'all? It's your boy Rico from StreetScores, and I'm finally done with my mock draft, man. I've been working on this all day since like 11 a.m., 12 p.m. But either way, we're here to do my very first mock draft after we traded for Deebo Samuel, Laramie Tunsil, and signed a bunch of free agents as well, man. And I'm going to break down why some elite prospects should fall to 29th overall, and we may have our pick at several guys that we may want. And I also want to make sure that we handle a lot of the needs that we have in this draft. I address a lot of them, and I also at the same time get you some insane ceilings here. We're talking about ceiling raisers here with the talent that I got you in all of these rounds. Also, I have a slight trade back in the middle of the draft, you'll see. And of course, I have a trivia question for you. I'll give you the answer at the end of this video. What former NFL quarterback inducted into the Pro Football Hall of Fame in 1965 became Washington's head coach the following season? That is a crazy situation. I'm gonna give y'all the answer to that by the end of this video. And before we dive into everything, make sure you still follow that like button, still follow the subscription button, still follow the bell next to that subscription button so you get notification each and every time I release an informative and opinion video just like this one. Make sure you stay tuned to all of the content. Really appreciate y'all for supporting every video, for making it to the end of the videos, for getting in the comment section, letting your voice be heard, all of the compliments as well. I've been super busy, but I really want to get to a lot of the comment sections that I've missed from the past couple of videos. I was on track. I was doing pretty well with replying and seeing a lot of the comments, but now I got to get back to it. Without further ado, instead of wasting even more of y'all time, let's get it. Adam. All right, so now, first of all, before we even get into the actual mock draft, now buckle up, this will take a few minutes. So go ahead and skip ahead if you want to just get straight to the draft picks, but I need to explain myself first because I know some of y'all are going to think that I'm living in fantasy land when we start to go through my mock draft, especially with who I have us taking with the 29th overall pick. But I want y'all to know that I literally did multiple mock draft simulations just to see what maybe even will be available 29th overall for us. I was walking the dogs, as you can see at the bottom left of the screen. I was on a walk with my dogs, and I was just doing a bunch of simulations. The first one, we had Malachi Starks taking the pick before ours at 28th overall, and then Walter Nolan was still available 29th overall. Second simulation, Colston Loveland was taking the pick right before ours, and we still had Amarian Hampton available. Third simulation, we had Jalen Walker, who went 3 picks before ours. That's in range, you know, that's a possibility right there. Then you still had Amarian Hampton, Walter Nolan, and Colston Loveland available, along with Luther Burden if you want him at 29th overall. Then the fourth simulation, Walter Nolan was taking 6 picks before. Then immediately after that, you had Malachi Starks, then Amarian Hampton, then Colston Loveland, 2 picks before, all in range. Then you had James Pierce and Luther Burden both available, and even Shadir Sanders was available too, so maybe somebody will be willing to trade up to get that 5th-year option for a first-round pick, especially for quarterbacks like people like to do, like the Ravens did for Lamar Jackson, and then maybe that gives us an out to trade back if we want to. Then 5th simulation, Walter Nolan was taking 5 picks before, but Emeka Ibuka 2 picks before, and James Pierce the exact pick right before ours, and then we still had Amarian Hampton and Colston Loveland available at pick 29. 6th simulation, James Pierce taking 2 picks before, Luther Burden the 1 pick before, and then we had both Walter Nolan and Colston Loveland available at 29. Then 7th simulation, Walter Nolan taking 3 picks before, James Pierce taking 2 picks before, and then Amarian Hampton and Colston Loveland were available. And then the 8th and final simulation, and with my last experimental mock draft, I mean, this one shut the whole operation down. After I got this scenario right here, I was like, we're done. I mean, it was like literally the best case scenario with how the draft played out in this simulation, which is why it was the last one I did. I mean, there was no point of even doing any more after this one. Now, I highly doubt that it will even become this, or the fact that it will even get better than this. That's why I stopped. But I ended up with Colston Loveland picked 5 picks before, right? Then you had Luther Burden 4 picks before, Jalen Walker 2 picks before, and then available at 29, we had James Pierce, Walter Nolan, and Amarian Hampton. That's all I needed to see. Again, that shut down the whole science experiment right there. I was like, I'm done. This is it. That's a beautiful way for the draft to fall for us in real life in April. I mean, if that were to happen, man, I might shed a tear, especially if we end up with one of those guys. And so now, even though I feel like Walter Nolan is a top 5 talent in the entire draft, I feel like he and Mykel Williams are being disrespected right now mightily. But for the purpose of us addressing the biggest remaining need on this team, I decided to take a pass rush specialist as edge rusher instead, 29th overall. And I love the idea of getting all of those names I mentioned. Like, you could clearly tell who are my guys that I really want for the Commanders at 29th overall by the names that I kept mentioning from those simulations. Like, there were probably a lot of guys available that y'all maybe really wanted, but that's like my short list of like 8 A- and up draft pick options for us at 29. But again, with pass rushing being the thing that we need to upgrade the most in the draft, like the very most, I feel like John Com even said that we were in on Joey Bosa and DeMarcus Lawrence. So even the Commanders front office has acknowledged the fact that we need some pass rush help, or at the very least, some notable edge rusher help and an increase in talent there. And especially after we missed out on Azeez Ojulari, now we're with the mock draft. Round 1, pick 29th overall, I was taking edge rusher James Pierce Jr. from Tennessee, and my comp for him is literally higher ceiling Brian Burns. Maybe you have some off the field concerns, we'll get there later, but like I just mentioned with the simulations that I just did, running through 8 of them, these were literally the exact 8 that I did. James Pierce was available in like half of them. And also, before we move on to the next draft pick, I'm gonna show y'all like the mock roundup of where everybody feels like we're gonna go as far as the draft, 29th overall next month. And James Pierce was picked out of like the 8 mock drafts from different experts and analysts. James Pierce was like 3 or 4 of them. We'll get to that later. And to remind y'all from my video like a week ago, I did say that I did not want just a Dante Fowler replacement after losing him, if you could call it losing, because we may have not even offered him at all at this point. But after Fowler was confirmed gone, again, I did not want a Dante Fowler replacement. I want a Dante Fowler upgrade. I want somebody better than him. And this guy is exactly that. Very similar strengths and weaknesses, very similar profile, but just better. Like, literally every weakness is a little less exposable than Dante Fowler's, and every strength I feel like is stronger with James Pierce. Now, I know coming out of the draft, Dante Fowler was supposed to be different. Like, there's a reason he went 3rd overall in his respective draft, but he never lived up to those expectations. He still ended up being a pretty good player, but he never lived up to what Dante Fowler was supposed to be at the NFL level when he was drafted. And I feel like James Pierce is going to be the upgraded version of what Dante Fowler actually ended up being. Now, why would a better version of Dante Fowler even be available in the 1st round? So let's go ahead and get the bad out the way first. First of all, he's seen as a pure situational pass rusher by a lot of scouts and experts right now. And even as high as I am on him, I do for sure feel like he needs to gain some weight to be able to develop into at least a solid run defender. Not even necessarily a great or an elite one, just solid, just playable. Like, on 1st and 10, we could at least throw you out there and not be afraid of our lives of the offense audibling and be like, oh, James Pierce is over there, oh, we're going to run his way. Like teams were basically doing that Dante Fowler and even Dorrance Armstrong's at time last season. And I believe that he can, at the very least, not be as bad as Dante Fowler when it comes to setting the edge and stopping the run on the outside of the defensive line. I think James Pierce is not saying a lot, but I think he will be a better run stopper and edge setter than Dante Fowler. But a lot of scouts and teams do not believe that he will gain that extra strength and ability to set the edge. Because I could even admit that he doesn't have a run stopping in his bag necessarily right now, but we'll see. So some teams already just don't even have him on their boards because of the lack of run stopping right now, even though I think he could gain it at the next level, and he's shown flashes in college. And then number 2, the biggest reason he will be available at 29th overall, and why out of all of those simulations he was available like half the time for us, are the huge character concerns. Even before the combine, people were very worried about his commitment to the sport, whether he's willing to do whatever it takes to become a great player. And a lot of people around him in college said that he has all of the talent in the world, but he's lazy. Like, shouts out to DB Brugler. He added some context to the character concerns of the 3 defensive linemen expected to be drafted in the 1st round. He said Mike Green's character concerns, the incident at UVA before transferring, Walter Nolan, different reports from A&M and Ole Miss about all kinds of things, and then James Pierce Jr., quote, what makes him tick, unquote. And then you had a guy named Corey Kennan who said, quote, Tennessee defensive end James Pierce reportedly has the worst character report of any player in this year's class. I was told that the Tennessee football program could not only breathe easier once Pierce left campus, but that his pitch count in the SEC play was not injury related. Pierce was seen as undeniably uncoachable and as a player with one foot out the door already this season, giving his coaches little incentive to put him on the field full time. I was told by one scout that Pierce Jr. is seen as a player with the worst character report of any player in this draft class. Another scout told me that they think the environment and people around him in Tennessee are the main issues. So some people blame the Tennessee program more than they blame him himself. And they think that he could become a real, true NFL pro when he enters an NFL building, when he's in the right environment, basically. But also, NFL personnel won't be shocked to see him on the board after the first 64 picks in the draft. And then also, with an interview from Walter Football, an anonymous AFC director of player personnel said that Pierce's character may deter his team from even drafting him no matter how far he falls. That's pretty crazy. So again, that's a huge red flag and big enough for several teams to completely take him off of their boards just off the rip. Just for that alone, like some of those reports have said. And what's even crazier is that with all of those character concerns that he had before the combine, that same guy had the nerve to go to the combine and then on the biggest day of his life, up to that point at the very least, forget his combine shirt at the hotel, and that's why he had to do his testing in that hoodie that went viral. I mean, that's inexcusable, dog. Like, that is something that I really worry about. Like, come on, man. Biggest day of your life and you forget your combine shirt at the hotel? Like, what kind of stuff is that? But again, to the point that a couple of those reporters brought up, that maybe it was more of a Tennessee problem, which as a Georgia Bulldog fan, I love the sound of that. Yeah, it's all Tennessee's problem. It has nothing to do with James Pierce. And maybe he's one of those guys that's going to be a product of his environment. He's not one of those guys that's going to step up, be a leader, and do everything you're supposed to do when their environment around him is bad. He's the type of person that needs a good environment to flourish, and we definitely have that. Maybe Adam Peters and Dan Quinn will believe in their culture enough to where they feel like they can fix all of that and give him the exact environment that he needs. And maybe he's not as bad as reported. I mean, at least NFL projection wise, because a lot of players save and protect their bodies and even lose focus when they realize they're basically playing for nothing because their team isn't a true playoff contender in college, which is something that somebody alluded to from one of those quotes that I just gave you, that he was kind of acting like he already had one foot out the door, like he's ready for the NFL. This whole college thing, he's over it basically. And so once he gets to the NFL, then he'll be two feet in, 10 toes down. I mean, there's a scenario where he could turn into a real professional once he gets to the NFL level, like somebody else mentioned. Now, I'm not saying that all of that is necessarily true, but I'm also saying that a lot of talented players mentally mail it in, or again, purposely preserve their bodies from any potential big injury during their final season in college. That may also explain his dip in production, and maybe he's one of those guys that will take the NFL far more seriously than he ever did college once he's getting paid like some real money. There's also something to not feeling challenged enough as well. Like, he's such a freak athlete that he was just simply born with crazy edge rusher gifts, and he's probably just had it so easy in high school and college that maybe when he gets to the NFL and now you're going against other insanely freakish athletes, that you are no longer just going to be stronger than and faster than all of the time anymore. Maybe getting embarrassed on the field, or even as soon as practicing against Laramie Tunsil every day, could probably be like the last resort to getting this guy to taking film study and development very seriously. His diet, his work ethic, his working out, everything. And again, maybe Quinn and AP believe their culture is strong enough with all of the leaders that we have throughout the entire coaching staff and the roster that they feel like the culture itself could fix James Pierce. Just like how it feels like everybody in the world but me was worried about Jalen Carter's character concerns, but the Eagles took their chances with him, and now he's the best player on last year's most dominant defense in the entire NFL. James Pierce could literally be our Jalen Carter level of and type of impactful player that opposing offenses literally have to game plan towards stopping every single week. And it's really hard to find those guys. It's not even a guarantee that every NFL draft will even have one of those guys. And if you have the chance to, I say you go ahead and take a guy like that. Best player available strategy. If James Pierce is there at 29, he is easily, more than likely, the best player available. It's just whether you're willing to deal with all of the character concerns and focus and lazy and all of that type of stuff. And when I say best player available, I truly mean that. Like, James Pierce definitely fits that description. Shouts out to NFL Draft Buzz, because I agree with their quote. What makes Pierce's ascent even more impressive is his rapid technical growth. Despite being relatively raw coming out of high school, he quickly mastered Tennessee's LEO position, becoming equally comfortable rushing from both 2- and 3-point stances. His performance in the 2024 Citrus Bowl against Iowa, including a momentum-shifting pick 6, showcased his playmaking ability on the biggest stage possible. That game proved to be a springboard into a dominant 2024 campaign where he registered 11 tackles for losses and 7.5 sacks, despite the constant attention from opposing defenses. Go look at Tennessee tape. Defenses are completely worried about James Pierce first. We got to stop him, and then we'll worry about everybody else after that. And the 6'5", 243-pound edge rusher defender brings a rare combination of length and explosiveness to the field. His 4.47 speed in the 40-yard dash puts him in elite company there, while his frame suggests room for additional muscle without sacrificing his trademark burst. This is a guy that can easily gain some extra muscle, weight, and strength without having to sacrifice his elite burst, bend, agility, speed, and all of that type of stuff. He has the potential to get even better once he gets to an NFL workout, gym, diet, all of that type of stuff. And beyond the measurables, Pierce's game film reveals a natural pass rusher with an advanced understanding of leverage and angles as well. That's something really hard to teach somebody. And traits that helped him record over 110 quarterback pressures during his collegiate career, while again receiving most of the offensive attention from opposing offenses. And in my opinion, his best days are only ahead of him. And if anything, at the very least, we need to do the entire NFL a favor and not let James Pierce fall to the Eagles, man. I mean, the other 31 teams will probably applaud us if we made sure he didn't. Like, you'd hear an eruption at the draft, and it won't be because the Commanders necessarily got a steal, even though I feel like it would be. I'm pretty sure most of the noise would be even other fan bases, 31 other teams and their fan bases celebrating the prevention of doom, basically. I mean, it's our civil duty as the Commanders at the 29th overall pick to stop James Pierce from falling to the NFL's villains, the Philadelphia Eagles, right now, man. I mean, that's like letting Anakin Skywalker go to the dark side, how they let that happen. Now, shouts out to Mason Kinahan for the Commanders mock draft roundup recently. This was from a few days ago. Jeremiah had us taking Azariah Thomas, the cornerback from FSU. Mel Kiper had us taking Maxwell Hairston, cornerback from Kentucky. CBS had us taking Matthew Golden, wide receiver from Texas. And then 33rd team had us taking Malachi Starks from Georgia. That's my dog. And then Pro Football Focus had us taking Walter Nolan, defensive tackle out of Ole Miss. All of the other mock drafts where you can look, James Pierce. You have the Draft Network, you have Tankathon, you have a few others all saying James Pierce to the Commanders at 29 makes way too much sense. And then now moving on, I then took our 61st overall pick in the second round, and I saw that the Browns wanted to trade. They gave me their 70th and 88th overall pick for our 61st and our 128th. And if that were to happen in real life, that's more than likely because there's some player that they feel like they have to get at 61st, and they can't wait till the 70th overall pick to even hope that that guy is there to even take that chance. So now, after making that trade, round 3, 70th overall, I have us taking running back Dylan Sampson from Tennessee, and basically he's like the ceiling of a very slightly slower Devon Achane. And first of all, I still definitely like Genty, Amarion Hampton, Trayvon Henderson, and Quiston Junkins more than Sampson overall. But I think as we're getting closer to the draft, I really, truly believe all of these running backs that we really like will go sooner in the draft than most people think. And being able to trade back and still get Dylan Sampson would be a steal and a genius move in my personal opinion, especially for what we need specifically. We already have B-Rob as the bruiser, even though I do feel like Quiston Junkins and Amarion Hampton would for sure be upgrades over B-Rob. And then we also already have an elusive third down back that can pass protect as well in Austin Eckler, even though I do for sure feel like Trayvon Henderson would be a big upgrade there for us as well. But Dylan could come in and be that true home run speed, that real speed and agility that we're currently missing in our running back room that really nobody else even potentially has. I like Chris Rodriguez and Jeremy McNichols, but neither of those guys have that. And most importantly, a guy like Dylan Sampson with that ridiculous speed and agility will force defenses to game plan against him and account for him when trying to figure out how to stop our offense. I mean, we really need a home run hitter that scares defensive backs and causes them just to hesitate even just ever so slightly on read options to the point that receivers are more open for Jaden Daniels because of it. I at least need that threat of a guy that can take it to the house any play on the field with Jaden Daniels to make things easier for Jaden. But how about Dylan? I know we just talked about Jaden quite a bit, but how good is he actually, and what is he actually good at? Well, first of all, he's very elusive. He had a 28.51% avoided tackle rate and a 6.55 elusiveness score, which is 4th out of the entire class out of all of these running backs. And a guy like that can get extra yards from guys whiffing on tackling him with the elite agility and movement skills could be huge in his offense. Again, Jaden is the offense. Don't get it wrong, but I love the idea of giving him weapons that make Jaden Daniels' job easier to where Jaden doesn't have to personally be responsible for every single yard that we gain in a game. Like, it felt like last year, very little of the yards that we got were after the catch or after contact coming from anybody consistently outside of Jaden Daniels himself. That's why I love the Deebo Samuel trade and why I'm super appreciative of Terry McLaurin, and specifically that screen that Terry McLaurin took to the house against the Lions in the playoffs, because that was one of the very few plays all year that somebody helped Jaden. And Dylan would bring that element to our run game and our passing game as well as a receiving option. Because what did Emmanuel Acho call them? What was the word he used? Down off guys. A guy where you can get him the ball and they'll get you yards and points by themselves. They'll make a play. You know, that boy Emmanuel Acho be wrong about a lot of stuff, but he was super right about the fact he specifically said that Jaden Daniels didn't really have a down off guy last year where he could literally just take a play off and let somebody else do all of the work on offense for any given play. Terry was that guy at times, but it's just hard for him to be that guy consistently because defense is literally game playing Terry McLaurin out of games. They literally basically virtually double team him with like an additional safety leaning towards him. But Deebo will be that guy for Jaden Daniels, and I also believe Dylan Sampson can be that guy as well. And I feel like that's big time, man, because Jaden Daniels, it literally felt like he had to earn every yard for our offense last year by himself. It would be really nice to add as many guys that can do it themselves. And again, just let Jaden Daniels take a breather for a second. And I also want to point out the fact that he will only be 20 years old when he takes his first NFL snap. So the sky's the limit. He hasn't even really scratched the surface of what he can be. Yes, he's coming from a gimmicky Tennessee offense that's always going against light boxes because they throw the ball so much and there's so many receiving threats out there and things like that. So it's not like he's had to face a lot of heavy boxes. Yes, he doesn't have a lot of refinement and nuance to his game like vision and running routes. And yes, he doesn't run as fast of a 40 time as I expected based on his film. He looks faster on tape than his actual 40 time though. But number one, I truly believe that all of that is coachable and will come with time and experience. Number two, again, he's going to be 20 years old when the regular season starts. So he's younger than Jinsey and Junkins by at least a year, and also 2 years younger than Amarian Hampton and Travion Henderson. And then number three, with our coaching and especially our quarterback, I'm expecting whichever new running back we bring in here through the draft to get closer to his ceiling than his floor, because there's no way defenses are going to be able to prioritize stopping anybody other than Jaden and Terry every game, and even Deebo Samuel is the backup option. So basically a guy like Dylan Sampson could easily just come into this offense and be able to see light boxes like he saw at Tennessee, but it's not because the offense is gimmicky in Washington, it's because the passing game is just that elite led by Jaden Daniels. So he could probably prosper as like an afterthought against most defenses where they're just like, man, I mean, Jaden is such a headache. We can't even focus on stopping the speed of Dylan Sampson. Now just imagine if Jaden Daniels had a couple of years ago version of Devon Achane in our offense right now. That's what I'm projecting. Now, round 3, 88th overall, I was taking cornerback Darian Porter out of Iowa State. And this is basically a more athletic and more agile Tariq Woolen. Now, let me put you on, just in case if you don't know who Darian Porter is, and y'all already know, a lot of the reason I do these mock drafts are to like bring more attention to some guys that I feel like deserve a lot more hype than they're getting everywhere I look. Like, some people out there still don't know who Darian Porter is. I know some people are starting to catch up, but this guy is different. I completely agree with NFL Draft Buzz when they said, quote, despite being a late bloomer at the position, Porter's film shows a corner who can make an immediate impact in the right system. I truly believe we have that system here with Dan Quinn and Joe Wood Jr. I feel like his exact traits are perfect and what we're exactly looking for, especially ceiling-wise. His elite combination of size and speed isn't just a workout warrior type of stuff. It shows up consistently when he's asked to match up against bigger receivers or carry routes vertically. And mind you, I want to, just in case, let's go ahead and take some time to acknowledge the fact that this guy at 6'3", nearly 200 pounds, ran a 4.3 flat at the combine. That's probably why you remember the name, but you don't exactly remember the player. You're like, Darian Porter, I've heard of that guy. That's why. He had a 9.99 relative athletic score. Great explosion with a great broad jump, elite agility, and elite speed, while also having great size as well. Again, 6'3", nearly 200 pounds, running a 4.3 and putting up insane shuttle, 3-cone, 40-yard dash times, broad jump times, just ridiculous. Insane athlete, alien type of stuff. Like, again, like I said a few videos ago, there's freak athletes and then there's aliens above that. This is an alien right here. When you watch him work in zone coverage as well, particularly in quarters or cover 3, you see a corner who already has a natural feel for leveraging his length and using the sideline to his advantage. Teams running heavy zone concepts are going to fall in love with Porter's potential. He's tailor-made for a Seattle-style cover 3 system where he can play with his eyes on the quarterback and use that track speed to close on anything in front of him. Now, granted, with the addition of Marshawn Lattimore and how great Mike Sanders still is in man coverage as well, I don't think we're necessarily going to go back to that old version of Dan Quinn. The current version of Dan Quinn prefers man press corners. Darian Porter can definitely do that as well, but also if Dan Quinn ever wanted to go back more so towards his Super Bowl win in Seattle defense, he could easily do that with a Darian Porter as well. I mean, that type of athleticism, natural God-given ability, and just the build that he has, and speed, quickness, strength, agility, all of that, he's a great fit for really any scheme you want to put him in. So just coach him up however you need to, ball the clay, make it happen. If you can't turn this guy into a good player, I feel like it's more indicative of the coaching staff not being good and not doing what they're supposed to do than Darian Porter, man. His ceiling is too ridiculous for that. Now, while he needs some technical refinement in man coverage, his ability to blanket bigger receivers and contribute on special teams means he won't be riding the bench as a rookie. Smart coordinators will deploy him strategically early on, matching him up against bigger receivers and sub packages while letting them wreak havoc on special teams. The ceiling here is a legitimate starting corner who can match up with the NFL's new breed of supersized receivers. And that's very important. Every year, there's a new freak at wide receiver coming in. 6'3", 6'4", running a 4.3 and stuff like that. The only way you can counter that is by getting a corner that's basically the same exact guy that should have been a receiver, basically, with the ridiculous athleticism and traits that he has as well. His combination of length, speed, and ball skills is exactly what teams are looking for on the outside in today's game. Like, he's literally what everybody hopes that a corner can be when you're taking a look at who he is and what he could potentially become. While age is a minor concern, Porter's rapid development curve and elite athletic traits suggest he could develop into a quality starter by year 2. Day 2 feels like a sweet spot for a corner with his unique skill set and immediate special teams impact. And now, when we're talking about special teams impact, this guy had 5 career block kicks in college. You know how hard it is to get even one? So at the very least, you're adding another special teams king to an already elite group of fellow perfect 10 relative athletic score Tyler Owens, all-pro Jeremy Reeves, and multi-pro bowler and the Commanders 2024 team leading special teams tackler in Nick Bellore. You would be adding him to that group. At the very least, you get way better at that, but I also have a lot of faith and willing to put down some money on the fact that this guy will be a good corner at the NFL level. He's just too athletic not to, and I feel like with our coaching staff, we can get a lot of greatness out of him. But I really feel like he can turn into like a Pro Bowl corner in our environment with our coaching staff, development plan, and everything like that. And with how our cornerback group is set up right now, we are the perfect match for each other. I mean, we are literally the perfect team to take a risk on a guy like that, a fairly raw guy like he is, with some elite talent and potential and natural gifts. Because we already have a cornerback group with 4 very playable guys in Lattimore, Sanford Still, Jonathan Jones, and Nick Benogany. So this guy wouldn't even be forced to go out there and play immediately in like stressful and clutch situations that may, you know, kind of ruin his confidence a little bit. We could throw him out there to specifically match up against like the super athletic freaks at the wide receiver positions, just every now and then to give him some significant game experience. You know, guys especially that are too tall for Sanford Still, but maybe too fast and agile for Lattimore. And ideally, within like a year or two, again, I think this guy becomes I think he could potentially become our best corner. He and Sanford Still could make up one of the best cornerback duos in the entire NFL for the next 5-8 years. I truly, truly believe that. And like I've been saying in all of my videos, with how we've handled this offseason so far, with free agency signings and trades, we don't really have any glaring weaknesses or holes left on the roster. We have at least moderate floors all up and down the team, all around the team. So that allows us to go into the draft looking for ceiling raisers and positional upgrades, not floor holders and position fixers, ceiling raisers. We already have playable and startable talent in every position group. How about we use the draft to try and find some potential Pro Bowl traitsy guys? And I feel like we definitely did that with those first 3 selections in James Pierce Jr., Dylan Sampson, and now Darian Porter. And then now going into the final 2 rounds, you're more than likely looking at ceiling as well, regardless of what your team's roster and weaknesses are, because that's just any draft. Usually 6th and 7th round, you're drafting ceiling, which takes me to my next pick. Round 6, 205th overall, I have us taking tight end Jalen Conyers out of Texas Tech. I see him as a raw, but way more athletic version of Zach Ertz. I mean, here's your ball of clay that you can hope you can mold into Zach Ertz' successor by the time Zach Ertz calls it quits, which who knows? It could be after this upcoming 2025 season, especially if we were to go on and win a Super Bowl. And this is like the perfect environment for a Jalen Conyers to land in, because he wouldn't be pressured to start or contribute a lot immediately, which he could now take some time to like develop the right way at the right pace. And I'm gonna say this for every offensive player that I include in any mock draft for really the next 10-15 years. With Jaden Daniels as his quarterback, I love our chances to getting closer to a player's ceiling than his floor. But who is Jalen Conyers? What is he already good at? Well, number 1, high ceiling and great athleticism. He has a 9.24 relative athletic score with great explosion and great agility, which will naturally allow him to be a deadly weapon for Jaden Daniels once he refines his route running and puts that athleticism to better and more efficient use. He's very athletic right now, and the natural talent is clearly there. But the trick is getting him to limit any unnecessary movement and steps as much as possible. Like right now, that athleticism isn't getting put to the most efficient use because sometimes he has wasted movement going different directions where he didn't necessarily have to. But the ball of clay is clearly there. I love the John Bates for the blocking. I personally believe that Ben Sinnott has some receiving tight end potential to him as well, but this coaching staff is treating him like he's our version of Kyle Juszczyk. So this Jalen kid has the body, talent, and natural gifts to project to potentially be our next Zach Ertz. Again, I feel like Ben Sinnott could have the potential to do that, but they're not acting like he does. So here's your next Zach Ertz. And then number 2, after Tyler Warren, I would say Jalen is probably the best contested catch tight end in this entire really deep tight end class. And going back to how I want to bring in guys that help make Jaden's job easier, imagine the very few times that Jaden is actually inaccurate, which is very rare. But then this guy, Jalen, stretches out and mosses a defensive back or a linebacker anyway for a first down. That basketball background really shows up in his jump ball ability with how he boxes out defenders and all of that type of stuff, high points the ball perfectly. And again, add any guys that make Jaden Daniels' job easier, man, I always like it. I'm always in favor of that. And now imagine how well his development could go with his ceiling of a player projection literally being on the same team as him and telling them exactly what to do, how to do it, and when to do it at every turn. I mean, what to eat, how to train, specific exercises and drills. Like Zach Ertz can literally take the time to put Jalen in his how to become the next me boot camp, the entire offseason, the entire playing season, regular season, postseason, all of that type of stuff. Like, who's better than to learn from the man himself that I see as his potential ceiling? Now, how about his weaknesses, issues, and the reasons why he'll even be available this late in the draft? Well, number 1, blocking strength and rawness. That, like Zach Ertz, can improve at the NFL level with both the right coaching staff and the right work ethic. I mean, he's already 10 pounds heavier than Zach Ertz right now, coming out of college. And Zach Ertz blocks pretty well for us, but he didn't originally come out of college blocking very well. So if Zach Ertz can learn how to block, this guy 10 pounds heavier definitely can. Number 2, he has some route running rawness, especially in like short and intermediate areas. But again, that's that wasted movement I'm talking about. He's not completely raw and new to it, but definitely not like walking in day one, getting open consistently against NFL level talent and all these freak athletes on every NFL roster. Then number 3, he has the occasional concentration drops that can be coached out of him, but again, high-end wise, you see him make some catches that other tight ends just can't make. And then number 4, he will be 24 in July. That doesn't really bother me, but I'm being 100% transparent here. Maybe that's a weakness to some of y'all, and I can see why it would be, but it personally doesn't stop me from taking him, especially in the 6th round. Now, moving on to our round 7, 245th overall pick, the final pick of my mock draft, and the most controversial pick, wide receiver Kyron Lacy from LSU, man. And to me, I feel like he's a blend of traits from prime Stephon Diggs and George Pickens mixed together. Now, granted, the crash and the awful decision making that caused this crash is inexcusable. Let's go ahead and get that out the way now. And on top of that, his decision making skills have even been in question even before the crash he caused, or reportedly caused. That's what the accusation is, but some people are saying that it may not have been his fault. Maybe he was a passenger. I don't know. Even though, I'm not gonna lie, those character concerns before the crash were never my concern personally. Like, those are the type of players I love to have on my team, especially at receiver. Huge trash talkers, just straight ignorant. I love that stuff. That's just me though. But then the guy declared for the draft 2 days after that supposed crash. Before any of us even knew that the crash even happened, he tried to just go ahead and sneak and act like the crash didn't happen and then just declare for the draft 2 days after the draft. And then we find out way later after we found out he declared for the draft that he had a crash 2 days before. I mean, just silliness, just pure just ridiculousness. Like, come on, dog. I mean, I can't defend everything or even a lot of the stuff that he does, but again, most notably that crash. But he bonded out, and he's at least good to go legally, because now there's some sort of claim that maybe he wasn't the one driving or something. I don't exactly know. Either way, though, are y'all willing to use your final draft pick on a projected first rounder? Because that's what he is. He is a first round talent. This guy was supposed to be the next in line as far as like the next LSU receiver lineage type of thing at the NFL level, like Justin Jefferson and Jamar Chase, Malik Neighbors, and Brian Thomas. He's supposed to be literally that talent, and I feel like he is. Like, to be completely transparent, this is an argument that he should be wide receiver 1 if he didn't have these legal and character issues. Like, there's an easy argument that he's more talented than Emeka Egbuka and Luther Burden. When I say talented, I'm talking about ceiling. I'm talking about, like, on his best day, or what he'll eventually become 4 years from now, he should be the better receiver between those three. And I also want to emphasize that he doesn't have undraftable character concerns like Jermaine Burton. I mean, I super warned y'all about him last year. I kept telling y'all about Jermaine Burton since his time at Georgia and Alabama. I kept telling y'all that Jermaine Burton was undraftable to me. And I know Lacy has a more serious situation attached to him, but outside of that one major isolated incident that of course I'm hoping that he learned from and never repeats, he's far less of a character concern than Jermaine Burton was coming out of the draft last year, who, again, I was screaming about last year, telling people, do not draft Jermaine Burton. He's like mentally off level character concerns. But I can admit with Kyron Lacy, you are not drafting him without a top 30 visit. Let's go ahead and get that out the way. Like, that is mandatory. Even without the crash, even if he never had that crash, he's still the type of character concerns that I can admit you need to at least bring him in for a top 30 visit and really look at him eye to eye and ask him some really serious and sensitive questions. So if we don't bring him in for a visit, then we're not even looking his way. Go ahead and scratch him off of our big board. But I personally would, though. I definitely would bring him in for a visit. I mean, I also want to point out the fact that all of our best and most proven receivers on this roster right now are 30 years old. And the NFL doesn't care unless really, like, if you're gambling or hitting women. So I'm not really even worried about Kyron Lacy's availability at the NFL level as far as practicing and playing games and things like that. The only question is if you think he's prone to potentially make the same insanely stupid mistake again. But if his former quarterback vouches for him, then I say draft him. You know what I'm saying? And when I say his former quarterback, I hope y'all didn't forget that Kyron used to catch passes from Jaden Daniels when Jaden just won the Heisman after that 2023 season. Playing with Jaden Daniels, he had 30 catches, 558 receiving yards, 18.6 yards per reception, and 7 touchdowns as the third option on the team to the older Malik Neighbors and Brian Thomas. But it's not like a definitive, obvious Kyron Lacy was worse than those three. He was just younger. He was just lower on the pecking order. So there's already that natural chemistry between Jaden and Kyron Lacy is my main point. And he would honestly have more chemistry with Kyron, if we were to draft Kyron, than he would have with Deebo by the time the offseason practices start. Because Jaden Daniels hasn't thrown a pass with Deebo Samuel yet. He's thrown plenty to Kyron Lacy. So, I mean, it's crazy in a weird way to look at it, but that's how it is. That's the reality. And again, if Jaden signs off on it, then I'm super with it. But if Jaden Daniels doesn't sign off on it, then that tells you everything you need to know about his former teammate. And that's the end of my draft. So at the end of the draft, basically imagine after the offseason that we already just had, especially after the regular and postseason that we had before that, now imagine you traded for Laremy Tunsil, you traded for Deebo Samuel, makes your team way better than it already was last year. We added a bunch of free agents that are going to strongly contribute to this team. And then on top of that, you're adding a higher ceiling Brian Burns, the next Devon Achane, plus a more athletic Tariq Woolen, plus the next Zach Ertz and the next great LSU wide receiver if he can stay out of trouble. Like literally prime Stephon Diggs, but taller in the 7th round. I mean, I feel like that's honestly a very successful draft, especially as far as grabbing ceiling and potential to add to an already solid roster from top to bottom. Again, we already have a bunch of floor already on the team from free agency and the trades that we did. How about we add some ceiling raisers in the draft? And all of these guys are ceiling raisers. We don't have any holes that we need to fill, but we have some positions I would like to upgrade, and these guys all have the potential to do that in major ways. But yeah, man, that's the end of this video. Please get in the comment section. Let me know if everything discussed in the video. Please still farm that like button, still farm the subscription button, still farm the bell next. That subscription button so you get notification each and every time I release an informative and opinionated video just like this one. Really appreciate y'all for supporting the video, man. If you made it this far in the video, I salute you, man. You are the GOAT. I'm already 45 minutes into recording, so if you used up a whole 45 minutes of your day to watch me, man, real salute to you. And as promised, the answer to the trivia question is Otto Graham from 1966 to 1968, which is crazy. That's an insane career arc right there, man. Pro Football Hall of Fame, and then Washington's head coach the very next season. Shouts out to him, man. That's fire. So shouts out to any of y'all that are like elite ball knowers that already knew that before I gave the answer. That's insane. I would have never been able to guess that on my own. So salute to y'all. Really appreciate y'all. Make sure you leave a like on the way out. And of course, let me know how you feel about every single one of my draft picks. Do you agree or disagree? And of course, let me know why and why not for every single one. If you agree, tell me why. If you disagree, tell me why. And what are your mock drafts right now? This is my first mock draft after we traded for Deebo Samuel and Laramie Tunsil and signed all of those free agents. So let me know even if you agree or disagree with my mock draft, what would you do with our draft picks that we currently have right now? Are you going for ceiling raisers? What's your strategy? What players do you want the most? Put me on to some players. Again, one of the main reasons I do these mock drafts is to put y'all on to players that you may not know about, or maybe guys you forgot about like Kyron Lacy. Put me on as well. That's why I love to read the comment sections, especially on mock drafts, because y'all may put me on to some 6th round, 7th round talent that I'm not aware of, and now I'm like, ooh, I really hope the Commanders get him at the very least as an undrafted free agent. So please put me on as well. I'm not this all-knowing, all-seeing oracle type of guy, you know, so I really appreciate it if y'all help me as well to gain more draft knowledge and some of these prospects that are coming up. I humbly ask of y'all assistance to put me on game with some of these other guys as well that I may be missing out on, man. It's impossible to be everywhere at once, so I really appreciate y'all. Catch y'all later. Leave a like on the way out. I'm out.